Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Straight Talking. Thank you so much for joining us. And tonight on the show, we're talking getting from A to B in the northeast. Transport. If you haven't got a chopper, you haven't got, let's say, a chauffeur, and you can't teleport, it can sometimes be a bit of a nightmare. And with me to discuss transport, two lovely ladies, very busy. Thank you so much for giving me your time. We've got Joyce McCarty, who is Deputy Leader of Newcastle Council. Thank you for joining us, Joyce.
Pleasure, lovely.
And I am determined, Vicky, I'm not going to look at my bit of paper. We've got Vicki Gilbert, who is Chair of the Tyne and Weir Public Transport Users Group.
Very good.
I got it right. Round of applause for myself. It's such a huge topic, so I've got no doubt we'll have you back here in a couple of weeks for another show. But I think we should probably start by, first of all, just working out what you do, what your role is as far as transport's concerned. So I'll start with you, Joyce. What's your role in the North East?
In relation to transport?
Yeah, just in relation to
Newcastle is the Newcastle Council leads on transport for the combined authority, so we're taking the lead on strategic issues around transport to support the region.
And that's the 7 combined authorities?
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
And are you the gaffer as far as that's concerned?
The Leader of Council is the designated leader on that, but obviously we're a team, so we all work together and support one another.
That's a massive job, isn't it?
It can be, yes.
I bet you're doing some overtime, probably.
Yeah.
And Vicky, what exactly does the group do, and why did you form, and how did you form?
Well, we formed in 2010, soon after several of us had been campaigning against the privatisation of the metro. And so we thought there are problems on public transport, and so that's how we started. And what we did was we went out to different community groups, and we formed a network of about 17 community groups that are now joined together and have similar aims, although they've got their own campaigns going on. So it includes Friends of the Earth, North Tyneside Youth Council, Living Streets, North East Pensioners Group, the Elders Council, etc.
So it sounds like that's a full-time job as well then. Does
Well,
it take up a lot of your time?
I do try to cut it down, but my partner says that I just live on the computer and on the phone organising people, but I suppose my role is, as chair, is a kind of facilitator and trying to keep an overview of what's happening on transport, and of course it has been especially busy lately because of the quality contract scheme. Yeah,
we're going to get onto that in 2 ticks. I think it's such a big subject. I think people will be screaming at the telly saying, ask about the roads, ask about the roads, please ask about the roads. I think the last few weeks, particularly the back end of November, it was just horrendous. I mean, in a previous life, I never did the commute because I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and did the commute then. But the commute is just, it's so stressful. Why is it, Joyce, that our roads seem to be so gnarled up?
I mean, it's a good thing for the economy, really, because what that tells us is that the local authorities have been given grants to improve the roads, and they're investing in their local road system. And roads have to be part of the essential transport system to support jobs and the local economy. Right. So it's a good sign. The difficulty is that whenever we have roadworks in place, it creates problems for the first two or 3 days until drivers find different routes.
Or the man in the van sits there with his
yes, sorting out the traffic lights. But it is a good thing for the economy, and we need roads in order to help our public transport and our buses to get around the place. So road improvements are essential.
I think people do understand that you get your money, don't you, for the year. So is it the highways agents that they'll give you the money and they'll say, look, you've got this, but you've only got it for the year. So you've got to spend that money
within a period
in the year.
Of time.
So you are time constrained in that you've got to get all those roadworks done at that time. But is there no way that perhaps, one set of roadworks could be done in January, one could be done in February, one could be March, or is there a technical reason as to why?
There's often reasons why things are timetabled over the course of the year. So, for instance, if it's a major investment, Gateshead are upgrading the A1, towards the metro centre. So all of that work will be over a long period of time. So they will have timetabled that with other things, and they will have negotiated with neighbouring authorities so that isn't disruption, you know, in the Durham part of the A1 and in the Northumberland part of the A1, that they will try and do it in association with their colleagues. But sometimes it's unfortunate, and I would just encourage your viewers to think about what it will be like when all of that's in place. You know, certainly around the central station we've had lots and lots of complaints about the central station, but actually we've begun to open up the public realm and it looks fantastic. So, you know, please keep in mind the improvements that will be for pedestrians as well as car users and bus users.
And maybe we should just you should just send to add to your list of things to do, send an email out to everybody's employees. They're late because the roadworks are on. I think that's what we need to do. But speaking of roads, I wonder what your opinion is, Vicki.
Well, obviously our group is there to improve the quality of public transport and to help the travelling public. So we're really there for public transport rather than encouraging car use, because we see car use as an anathema in a way, because it's encouraging climate change and carbon emissions. So our purpose is to improve the public transport facilities and make them joined up, make them integrated. So you have a real problem with, obviously, our view about cars is that they cause a lot of pollution because the government has encouraged huge investment in diesel cars, and I think it's about 50% of cars in England are in fact diesel, and it's been kept, I think, very quiet, but about 500 people in Tyne and Weir alone die from car pollution, which is mainly from diesel particulates in cars. So
is that over a year?
That's over a year.
That's a phenomenally high figure. I don't think I've
and
ever heard that before.
They die from heart attacks, strokes, asthma, and many other things as well.
So really, we need to get...
Because of what the particulates do once they get in your lungs, they cannot be got rid of. So
we need to get rid of get less people in their cars.
But it's also, you asked about the A1 where you've got huge congestion, but it isn't just the A1, it's every time that people stop at traffic lights or wherever. You've got a surge coming out from these vehicles, whether they're lorries or cars or even buses, and it's that people are absorbing in, and it affects pedestrians and it affects people who live near major roads as well. So they're breathing, even in their houses, they will be breathing in the nitrous oxide and the particulates.
So obviously, if it's gnarled up, I mean, you can see it when you're in your car, your fuel goes down, doesn't it? So if it's gnarled up, there's going to be even more of that coming out. So obviously, for road users, it's important that we do get the roadworks gone and we get the place running freely. But also to get people onto public transport that will get them there on time, because buses, public transport,
as well,
and buses use roads, so it's still got to be sorted out. In terms of getting people out of their cars and encouraging them onto public transport, how are you guys going about that?
That there are several things we need to do in order to do that. We need to make public transport easy, accessible, clean, welcoming, you know, the best quality public transport that we can, and that will be one of the things that encourages people to leave their cars at home. But we also need to think about the way it's priced, and at the moment, if you want to travel from you know, outskirts of Sunderland into the city centre, and you would probably have to do it by bus and by metro, and there isn't a simple ticketing system, so we do need to work on a smart card system, which means that you can get on a bus at home and you can travel wherever you want to be within the combined authority area, you know, with one ticket or one system. We don't currently have that.
I'm looking here because I've got a question that came in on Twitter, and incidentally, if ever, you know, there's anything that you want to comment on the show, it's really easy. @Made in Tyne Weir is the Twitter address, and this comes from David at Photo Northeast, so thank you very much for your tweet. When are we getting a system like London? Please ask Joyce. I'm sick of problems with tickets and the 3 different passes my son needs every day for the buses. That just doesn't seem joined up, does it?
No, it doesn't, no. And which is why one of the things that's part of our quality contract scheme proposals has been about ticketing, because you can do some bus to bus, but it isn't simple. And if you're trying to get from one town or out to one of the cities in the area, you just can't do it easily. So that is part of our proposals for the future.
So I don't travel by bus, darling. I travel by chauffeur. No, I don't. I travel by car, but that's just because the hours, and also I live in the middle of nowhere, so the bus, that's another thing, is that for the countryside. I'm going to get onto that in a minute, but that's not great. I think we have 2 buses a day. So if I was to travel, say, from out of County Durham, where I live, would I have to buy a ticket from where I live to the next town, and then because it's a different bus service, I would then have to buy another ticket and another ticket?
And generally, yes. Yeah, it's very, very complicated.
So can we not get an Oyster card? What do you think?
We are working on that. That is part of our quality contract scheme proposals, that we would have something similar to an Oyster card. So that you could get on, and we're trialling it on the Metro at the moment. So you can, you use your card and you click in and click out for your Metro journey, and the system will give you the cheapest price for that day. So you can use that. That is part of the plan.
And would it be like a monthly thing as well, like the Oyster card? Can people buy them?
Yeah. Well, you put money onto your card at the moment. What's being piloted and tested is you put money onto that card, and then you use it until you need to top it up, and you can top it up on your smartphone.
Well, I think that's a good idea. I think we just definitely need to get to that phase.
But in London, the buses in London, you can travel end to end in London for about £1.40.
Yeah.
You can't travel a mile in Tyne and Wear. For that kind of money. It costs you much, much more to do a mile in the city centre in Newcastle. So, we need to address that.
That, Joyce, is a fantastic stat to end the first half on, I think. See, it's more expensive to live in Tyne and Wear than it is in London. Not. Vicki, we're going to come back to you very shortly. We're just going to take a break, and we'll come straight back to Vicki. Thank you so much for watching Straight Talking. Welcome back to Straight Talking. Thank you for joining us, and this evening, transport. And just before the break, Joyce McCarty, Deputy Leader of Newcastle City Council, and also Vicki Gilbert, I'm going to get this wrong now, Vicki, I got it right the first time, Chair of the Tyne and Wear Public Transport Users Group.
Absolutely.
That's right. Yeah. Joyce hit us with the most amazing stat, that it costs more in Tyne and Wear on public transport to travel a mile than it does in London, which I just think is phenomenal. And Vicki, you wanted to jump in there, so.
And that's across the whole of London. Yes, the statistics for investment are roughly £5,432 spent by the government in London on transport. Not just on buses, this is generally on transport, this is including roads, and 232, so it's about 1,000 times more, and yet London's not 1,000 times bigger than Newcastle, and than Tyne and Wear.
But I think they forget we even exist, to be honest.
So it's extraordinary investment in London, and that is how that's how they get their fares to be cheaper.
And not only that, how the whole place has just become a bubble. I mean, that's another show, but that's just ridiculous. Speaking of investment, people will hear this phrase quite a bit at the minute, quality contracts. People will hear this phrase, and to be honest, I didn't even understand what that was. So I know that you're doing a good deal about it as well, Vicki. Can you just explain? I know it's an 800-page dossier, so we're only here for about another 10 minutes. So can you just explain, Joyce, in a quite succinct manner what it is?
I think local authorities in the region, with the Integrated Transport Authority, wanted to look at what we could do to reinvest in buses, to ensure that buses, as part of the whole public transport network, were delivering a quality service for our residents. And there are real issues about fewer and fewer people using buses year on year, and we want to address that. We want to get people out of their cars and back on buses. And in order to do that, we need to address the issues of how much it costs, where the buses run, and how frequently those services operate. And I think the quality contract scheme allows us to do that, because it puts the control for what we offer and what we're willing to subsidise back in the hands of local authorities.
Because at the minute, am I right in thinking, and I might be wrong, but all the buses are privately owned. So the different ones that you see the one with the eagle on the back, and
they're all franchised.
Right, so it's all franchised, and so some businessman somewhere is profiting from these.
Well, shareholders are profiting from them, but in London they were never completely deregulated. So in London they've had the quality contract scheme since 1986. So all that Tyne and Wear councillors and the combined authority are trying to do is improve the bus service and have a system like London, which should be cheaper for about 80% of people.
I mean, it really should, because it is expensive, and I say, you know, they're just not as frequent as they should be. So what are you guys doing? What's the group doing as far as the quality contracts are concerned?
Well, we've been campaigning for 3 years, and it's really a delight to be campaigning for something really positive rather than campaigning against something. So, you know, we've supported the combined authority, and previously it was Tyne Weir Integrated Authority for Transport, and so we've been holding stalls in market places. We've been going to events. We collected a huge number of signatures, and then the following year we'd had to do it again. We used cards in that case, so we've been going into libraries and talking to people, and I think the biggest, it sounds very complicated, quality contracts.
It does,
but when you tell
baffling.
people about London, they don't want to know the technicalities. They want to know that I think the biggest selling point of it is that they can have a smart card and get on, buy one zonal ticket and move, like somebody goes to work. I've been told somebody's son goes to work and he has to change 3 different bus operators.
Yeah.
And it means that somebody like that would have a zonal ticket, and they would just have one, they would pay for just one zone or whatever number of zones, and they would then move from either buses, metro, or even ferry.
Yeah. And how long do you think, you know, people sitting at home watching the show, because it always seems that these things seem to take a really, really, really long time. When do you think, Joyce, that people that have this hellish commute will be benefiting from this? How
Probably
long?
2016. The process that we have to go through now is we've supported the moving to the next stage, which means that we go to an independent travelling commissioner,
Right.
you know, a transport commissioner from Leeds, who will look at everything that has been submitted. We'll look at all the paperwork and see whether our scheme holds up to the affordability test. That's a process that will take several months. And then we will be asked to make a decision on that, because all they will do is give us guidance really on whether our scheme stacks up.
Right. Now, we haven't talked about trains much, so I think we need to get onto trains. I'm sure not very long ago there was some mention of the Hexham to Carlisle line electrification, something happening there. I know
ideas about doing that.
Yeah, and the
service is
Ashington
really poor.
You know, so much overcrowding and trains once an hour, and
without toilets, you might be on it for an hour and a half, and there's no, no public convenience. It's, you know, so there are
when you're getting on a bit,
range
that's
of whole range of issues to address.
Yeah. So, and the Ashington Blythe line, is there some talk of that coming back on as well?
Well, it has been included in some of the North East plans, but of course you need investment in order to do that. You're talking about huge investment.
Are we going to get it?
Well, it hasn't been talked about much in the One North plan. I mean, Joyce can tell you more on that one, but it is about also expanding not just rail, it's about expanding the metro system and possibly introducing trams. And again, the plans have been suggested by the combined authority, and what we need now is the government to say, instead of the trillions they're investing in the road system, investing the equivalent amount in public transport system as well.
And would you concur with that, Joyce? Do you want them to invest more in the public transport as opposed to just the roads?
Absolutely. Unless we improve public transport, we are going to end up, you know, as they are in the States, where actually you just sit in a queue in the car on your way to work, and that's just, you know, well, that does not help the economy, it does not help people to get to work, and doesn't create jobs.
It's just frustrating.
But for us, it's what's more significant for our group. Obviously, Joyce has got responsibility to the economy on behalf of the local authority that she services. But we're also very concerned about the environment and climate change. So unless the government does invest in public transport and helps people get out of their cars, because people want a reliable system. That's why a lot of people are using their cars, but a lot of them are just one person in each car. And if we had a more attractive, invested in public transport system with a more reliable, real-time, so that people knew exactly where the buses were,
Yeah.
etc., and that will be part of the quality contract scheme to give people that information.
And the connectivity between, I think you wanted to talk about that as well, Joyce, didn't you?
Yeah.
So just...
Connectivity is really, really important. You know, if we want people
What does that
from...
phrase mean?
It means joining everything together,
Yeah.
so that the system, you know, the public transport systems easily link together. So buses, the metro and the trains all join up in terms of their service. So you can get off a train from London because you've got a meeting in the north of Newcastle, and you can get straight onto a metro to get you there. So it's all about that.
And
yeah.
that'll bring more business
It
up
will,
here, which
yeah.
is what we want. Now, there's been obviously a lot of talk about HS 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I hear phrases like, oh, we're connecting the cities of the north, Sheffield, Manchester, Leeds. I have never once heard anybody say the words Sunderland and Newcastle. I haven't heard those words. Why not? Why don't we hear those words?
Because HS2 will only take you to the Midlands and to Crewe. So what we're doing is working with other local authorities from Manchester across Yorkshire and to the northeast, as well as the authorities that link up on the East Coast Main Line, and you know, the Newcastle to Carlisle. Because unless it's all improved, HS2 will not benefit the northeast or the north, you know, in total, if you think of the Manchester to Leeds corridor. Unless all of that is joined up and effective, it won't help us in the northeast to improve our economy.
And the East Coast line, Joyce, that's publicly owned?
That is publicly owned at the moment under the DOR.
Right.
It's a department of the government. But the government is going to do away with that. It was handed back by National Express because they weren't making enough profit on it. It was handed back to the government, and they weren't even fined. And then East Coast came out of that. But sadly, even East Coast is almost run, although it's run in terms of profit, it made about £400 million that went back into the public purse for schools and hospitals, etc. But our concern is that its prices are still very high.
I was going to say,
and
far too high. People just look at the prices.
Well, it's only
insane.
full. It's only 40 on average. It's only 45% full, which we think is a disgrace. When you've got climate change, you want to get people out of their cars between here and London and using public transport.
Now, we could go on, there's so much to talk about, but I know I've only got a couple of minutes
left. But we don't want to see it privatised, and that's what's happening now, is it's gone out for franchising, which means it will go back into private ownership.
And we don't want to see carriages in the first class completely empty and then everybody else sitting in the bits in between. Walking and cycling. We've got 2 minutes, ladies.
Yeah,
Where should we start? We'll start with you, Vicki, because I know you're very, very passionate about getting people out of cars, walking and cycling. So we're campaigning, we're all linked up. We've got Newcastle Cycling Group, we've got Living Streets, who are into the walking environment, and so we're campaigning for integrated transport, as Joyce has already said, but we want to see pavements so that they're better for walking on, so that people don't have slips and falls. That means a lot of investment, which councils with the huge cuts they've got are very limited on what they can do. We want to see a much more attractive environment, but more succinctly, we want to see the good investment that the government has made for sustainable activity for cycling, and that's going into school, work's being done going into schools. But it's not enough. Even the Transport Committee of the government is saying that £2 a head on cycling is not good enough, and it should be £10 a head. Right, so and I'm guessing, Joyce, that you would want to get more people on the bikes as well. Can we have Boris bikes? Can we have some Boris bikes?
We do have Boris bikes. Anyone run a similar scheme in Newcastle? It's not as extensive, obviously, as Boris's bikes, but we do have a scheme. But we are investing. We've been given a lot of money to invest in capital infrastructure to improve the safety, really, around cyclists and provide opportunities for more people to ride.
Because it just doesn't seem that it just doesn't have the same amount of appeal as it does in sort of in Europe, because it doesn't seem to be as safe. But we're going to work on that.
We are.
Brilliant. Ladies, we could talk and talk.
As a cyclist, I definitely want that.
I'd like to see you in your Lycra. Vicki, Joyce, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great having you on the show, and thank you so much at home for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you want to see more on transport, if there are issues you'd like us to cover, you know, this is your show. This is why we're here to straight talk for you. You can follow us on Twitter @MadeInTyneWear. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you very soon.